Chapter 1. The stolen even-inked calf sat tucked between two crumbling tenements on the east side of the city, where gas lamps flickered against cobblestones and the fog rolled in thick from the river. Elena Torres had chosen it deliberately, far from the estate, far from watching eyes, far from the cold marble halls where she'd spent the last 6 months learning to walk softly and speak less. She smoothed her borrowed dress, a deep plum thing her roommate had insisted she wear, and tried to remember how normal women behaved on dates. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself this. So long since she'd felt like anything other than a ghost drifting through candlelit corridors, changing linens for a master she barely saw and couldn't begin to understand. "You're nervous," David said, smiling across the small table. He was handsome in an easy, uncomplicated way, brown eyes warm, laugh lines visible even in the dim light. "A school teacher, human, safe, a little," Elena admitted, wrapping her hands around her teacup. The porcelain was chipped, but the tea was hot, and that felt like luxury enough. "I don't do this often." "Go on dates? Leave the estate?" His smile faltered. "That place you work? The one up on Ravencross Hill?" Elena nodded, watching steam curl between them. She shouldn't talk about it. The employment contract had been specific about discretion, about the consequences of gossip. But David's curiosity felt innocent, and she was so desperately tired of carrying secrets that weren't even hers. "It's old-fashioned," she said carefully. "The family that owns it keeps strange hours." "I mostly work nights." "Strange hours," David repeated, leaning forward. "Elena, I've heard stories about that house. People say a lot of things." She cut him off gently but firmly, the way she'd learned to redirect questions from tradesmen who delivered to the estate's back entrance. "Most of it's nonsense," but even as she said it, her mind drifted to the master of the house, Lord Sealanthorne. She'd seen him perhaps a dozen times in 6 months, always at night, always moving through the halls like smoke given form. Tall, pale, beautiful in a way that didn't quite sit right in the eyes. He never ate at the table she set, never opened the curtains she'd been forbidden to touch during daylight hours, never looked directly at her, though she sometimes felt his attention like cold fingers against the back of her neck. The other servants whispered that he was cursed, that the Thorne family had made a devil's bargain generations ago and now paid the price in darkness and isolation. Elena didn't believe in curses, but she believed in grief. She'd seen it in the careful way Lord Thorne held himself, in the ancient sorrow that clung to him like expensive cologne. "You're doing it again," David said, pulling her back to the present. "Doing what?" "Disappearing." His hand covered hers on the table, warm and solid. "You get this look, like you're somewhere else entirely." Elena forced a smile. "I'm sorry. I'm here. I promise." They talked for another hour about his students, about the book she was reading, about spring coming early this year and whether the river would flood. Normal things. Human things. By the time they left the cafe, Elena almost felt like herself again. Like the girl she'd been before the scandal, before the exile, before she'd taken a position in a house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. David walked her to the corner where she could catch the last omnibus up the hill. The fog had thickened, turning the street lamps into smudges of gold against gray. He hesitated, then leaned in to kiss her cheek. "Can I see you again?" he asked. Elena opened her mouth to answer and felt it. That familiar cold prickle of awareness, sharp as a blade between her shoulder blades. She turned. Lord Sealanthorne stood 30 feet away, half hidden in the mouth of an alley. He wore black as always, his coat cut in a style decades out of fashion, his hair dark enough to swallow light. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath, silver pale in the lamplight, fixed on her with an intensity that felt like physical pressure. "Elena?" David's voice seemed to come from very far away. "What's wrong?" She couldn't answer, couldn't look away. Lord Thorne's expression was absolutely still, but something moved beneath it, something vast and cold and furious. His gaze shifted to David, just for a moment, and Elena felt her stomach drop. She'd seen that look once before, when a tradesman had tried to cheat the estate. The man had left, bleeding from a split lip, though no one had seen Lord Thorne move. "I have to go," Elena said, the words tumbling out too fast. She pulled away from David, already moving toward the omnibus. "Stop. Thank you for tonight." "I'm sorry. I have to." She didn't finish. She just ran, her borrowed dress tangling around her ankles, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, she heard David calling her name, confused and hurt, but she couldn't stop. Couldn't explain, because when she'd looked into Lord Sealanthorn's eyes, she'd seen something that terrified her more than his inhuman stillness or the rumors that clung to his house. She'd seen recognition, possession, jealousy. The omnibus was pulling away as she reached it, but the driver saw her desperation and waited. Elena climbed aboard, fumbling with her fare, and collapsed into a seat. Through the window, she could still see that alley mouth. Lord Thorne was gone, but somehow, she knew with absolute certainty that he was already on his way home, and that when she arrived, he would be waiting. Chapter 2. The Reckoning. The state loomed against the night sky like a monument to forgotten things. Elena had walked this hill road dozens of times, but tonight every shadow seemed to press closer, every rustle of wind through bare branches felt like a warning. The omnibus had dropped her at the iron gates, and now she stood alone, with the long gravel drive stretching before her like a sentence yet to be carried out. She could still turn back, find a room in the city, send word she was ill, pretend tonight had never happened. But rent cost money she didn't have, and pride was a luxury she'd lost the right to when her name had been dragged through drawing rooms across 3 counties. This position, strange as it was, had saved her from destitution. She wouldn't throw it away over a look in an alley, no matter how unsettling. Elena straightened her spine and walked. The house revealed itself in pieces as she approached, mullioned windows dark as closed eyes, ivy climbing stone walls older than the city itself, turrets that served no modern purpose. Most of the servants lived in the east wing, but Elena had been given a small room on the 3rd floor of the main house, close to the master's private chambers. At the time, she'd thought it an honor. Now she wondered if it had been strategy. The front door opened before she could reach for the handle. Mrs. Calloway stood in the entrance hall, her housekeeper's keys glinting at her waist, her expression carved from granite. "You're late," the older woman said flatly. "Lord Thorne requested you attend him in the library immediately upon your return." Elena's mouth went dry. In 6 months, she'd never been summoned directly. Her instructions came through Mrs. Calloway or the butler, always filtered through layers of protocol. Did he say why? "Lord Thorne does not explain himself to me." Mrs. Calloway's tone could have frosted glass. "And I suggest you do not keep him waiting longer than you already have." 3rd door on the left, west corridor. Elena knew where the library was. She'd dusted every book in it, polished the mahogany tables, swept the hearthstones, but she'd never entered while he was there. Her footsteps echoed too loud against marble floors as she walked. The west corridor stretched long and shadow-draped, lit only by candles and wall sconces that flickered as she passed. The servants said the estate had been wired for electric lights years ago, but Lord Thorne preferred the old ways. She stopped outside the library door, pressed her palm flat against the wood to steady herself, and knocked. "Enter." His voice carried through the heavy oak, soft as crushed velvet and twice as dark. Elena pushed the door open. The library was a cathedral of books, 2 stories tall, with a gallery running the perimeter and ladders on brass rails for reaching the highest shelves. A fire burned in the massive hearth despite the spring warmth outside, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. And there, standing before the flames, with his back to her, stood Lord Sealanthorne. He didn't turn. "Close the door, Miss Torres." She obeyed, her fingers trembling slightly on the handle. The click of the latch sounded final. "You left the estate this evening," he said, still not looking at her. His shoulders were rigid beneath his coat, his hands clasped behind his back with the careful control of a man holding something dangerous. "Without requesting permission. I was told I had Tuesdays free," Elena said, fighting to keep her voice level. "It's in my employment contract. To rest. Not to gallivant through the city with strange men." The words landed like a slap. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks, part shame, part anger. "How I spend my free time is my own concern, is it?" Now he did turn, and the firelight caught his face in sharp relief. He was beautiful the way Winder was beautiful, cold and perfect and utterly inhuman. Those pale eyes found hers and held. "You wear my livery, sleep under my roof, eat bread purchased with my coin. Your time ceased being entirely your own the moment you signed that contract." "The contract says nothing about the contract," Lord Thorne interrupted, his voice dropping to something quieter and infinitely more dangerous. "Says you agree to maintain the discretion and reputation of this household, parading through public establishments, drawing attention, allowing strange men to touch you." He kissed my cheek. The words burst out before Elena could stop them. One innocent kiss, and you speak as if I've committed some crime. Silence crashed between them. Lord Thorne went absolutely still, and for the first time, Elena saw the mask crack. Beneath the aristocratic control, something ancient and furious stirred. Innocent, he repeated, tasting the word like poison. He moved then, crossing the distance between them with impossible speed. One moment he stood by the fire. The next he was close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin. You think anything about tonight was innocent? Elena should have stepped back, should have lowered her eyes, apologized, played the proper servant. Instead, she lifted her chin and met his gaze directly. I think you're angry about something that has nothing to do with my employment. The words hung in the air between them. Lord Thorne's eyes widened, fractionally surprise breaking through rage, and then something else flickered across his features. Something that looked almost like pain. You don't understand what you've done, he said, his voice rough now, stripped of its usual polish. Who you've endangered. Endangered. David is a schoolteacher. He's harmless. It's not him I'm concerned about. Lord Thorne's hand rose, almost touching her face, then dropped. A muscle worked in his jaw. There are eyes on this house, Miss Torres. Eyes that have been watching for weakness, for leverage, for any excuse to move against me. And you, he stopped abruptly, turned away, pressed his palms against the mantelpiece hard enough that his knuckles went white. Me what? Elena demanded, surprising herself with her boldness. What am I to you that it matters who I see or where I go? Lord Thorne laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. You should leave, now, pack your things and be gone by dawn. You're dismissing me? For taking an evening off? I'm protecting you from something you're too naive to comprehend. He still wouldn't look at her. This house, this life, it's not safe for someone like you. Someone like me. Elena heard the bitterness in her own voice. You mean someone ruined? Someone with nowhere else to go? That brought his head around. For a moment, she saw past all his careful defenses to the loneliness underneath. The same loneliness she carried, different in shape, but identical in weight. I mean someone alive, he said quietly. Someone warm. Someone who should be dancing in cafes with harmless school teachers, not trapped in a tomb with what? Elena stepped closer, close enough to see that his chest didn't rise with breath, close enough to feel the absolute absence of a heartbeat. With you? Lord Thorne closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they blazed with something between warning and surrender. Yes, he breathed. With me. Chapter 3. The truth in shadow. Selena should have run. Every instinct screamed at her to back away, to flee. The library and this house and the man, the thing standing before her with eyes that held centuries she couldn't comprehend. But her feet remained rooted to the Persian carpet, her gaze locked with his. You're not dismissing me, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. You're trying to frighten me away. Lord Thorne's laugh was bitter. If you had any sense of self-preservation, you would already be frightened. Perhaps I lost my sense of self-preservation the same night I lost my reputation. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the roaring fire. When my fiancé chose my cousin over me and made certain everyone knew why. When my own family turned me out rather than weather the scandal. I had nothing left to lose when I came here, my lord. I still don't. Something shifted in his expression, recognition, maybe, or unwilling respect. He moved to a side table, poured dark liquid from a crystal decanter into the glasses. Port, she realized, though she'd never seen him drink. Sit, he said, not quite a command. Please. Elena lowered herself into one of the leather chairs flanking the hearth. Lord Thorne handed her a glass, then took the chair opposite, the fire, casting dancing shadows across his too pale features. This close, she could see details she'd missed before, the ancient quality of his stillness. The way candlelight seemed to slide off his skin rather than illuminate it. The slight points to his canine teeth when he spoke. You're not going to drink that, she observed, nodding at his untouched glass. No, he set it aside. I haven't consumed anything but, he stopped, jaw tightening. I maintain certain habits for appearance's sake. The servants talk less when I pretend at normalcy. The servants already talk. Elena sipped the port, letting warmth bloom in her chest. They say you're cursed, that your family made a bargain with dark forces, and now you pay the price, close enough to the truth to be dangerous. Lord Thorne leaned back, studying her with those unsettling eyes. What do you believe, Miss Torres? She should deflect, should offer some safe, non-committal answer. Instead, she heard herself say, I believe you don't sleep. I believe you never eat. I believe you move through this house like a ghost, and that sometimes when you look at me, you seem surprised I can see you at all." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of flames. Then Lord Thorn rose abruptly, paced to the windows overlooking the darkened grounds. "The Thorn family has ruled this territory for 400 years," he said quietly. "We are one of the 7 great houses, bound by laws older than nations, sworn to protect the boundary between your world and ours. We are not cursed, Miss Torres. We are," he hesitated, seeming to choose his words with painful care. "Evolved, changed, no longer entirely human. Vampire." The word fell from Elena's lips unbidden, tasting of fairy tales and nightmares. Lord Thorn's shoulders tensed. "That word carries connotations of mindless monsters. We are not that. We maintain civilization, enforce ancient accords, prevent chaos. The houses function as government, court, and law unto ourselves." Elena's mind raced, trying to reconcile fantasy with the man before her. "The blood. You need blood, yes." He turned to face her, and she saw shame flicker across his features. "But we are not animals. We have rules. Consent is absolute. We feed from willing donors who understand the exchange, who are compensated and protected. Those who break these laws answer to the Night Court. And the other houses you mentioned, they follow these rules?" His expression darkened. "Most do. House Ravencroft," he spat the name like a curse, "has grown bold in recent years. They believe the old laws are weakness. They push boundaries, take liberties, threaten the balance we've maintained for centuries. What does this have to do with me?" Elena asked, though dread was already coiling in her stomach. "With tonight?" Lord Thorn crossed to her chair, knelt so they were eye to eye. This close, she could see flecks of darker silver in his irises, could smell something faintly exotic, myrrh, maybe, or aged parchment. "House Ravencroft wants my territory," he said. "They've been gathering allies, building their strength, waiting for any sign of weakness they can exploit. And 3 months ago, I made a catastrophic error in judgment." "What error?" His hand lifted, ghosted along her cheek without quite touching. "I allowed myself to notice you, to watch you move through my halls like sunlight incarnate, to listen for your footsteps, your voice, your laughter with the other servants." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "To care what happened to you." Elena's breath caught. "I don't understand. Vampires form attachments rarely, Miss Torres, but when we do, they are absolute, consuming, obvious to any who know how to look." His eyes searched hers desperately. "House Ravencroft has spies everywhere. If they realize you matter to me, they will use you against me, hurt you to hurt me." And his control finally cracked, anguish bleeding through. "I cannot protect you and fight a war simultaneously. So you tried to drive me away," Elena said, understanding dawning. The anger about David wasn't jealousy. It was fear. It was both. Lord Thorn stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "When I saw him touch you, I wanted to tear out his throat. The urge was so strong, I had to leave before I did something unforgivable. That kind of possessiveness is exactly what will get you killed." Elena rose, her legs unsteady. Her world had tilted on its axis, everything she thought she knew revealed as surface illusion. "What happens now?" "Now you leave. Tonight, I'll provide references, enough money to start fresh somewhere far from here. Somewhere safe. And if I don't want to leave?" Lord Thorn's eyes blazed. "This isn't a negotiation." "No," Elena said, surprised by her own certainty. "It's a choice. Mine to make." She moved closer, watching him track her movement with predatory focus. "You said consent is absolute in your world. Does that extend to this?" "Elena, I spent 2 years being someone's puppet," she interrupted. "Dancing to their tune, molding myself to fit their expectations, only to be discarded when I no longer served. I won't be managed again, even for my own protection. Especially for that." Something like admiration flickered across his features. "You're remarkably stubborn for someone so fragile, and you're remarkably protective for someone so dangerous." She reached out, let her fingers brush his hand. His skin was cool, marble, but she felt him tremble at the contact. "Tell me what's coming. Let me decide if I'm brave enough to face it." Lord Thorn stared at their joined hands as if witnessing a miracle. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "War is coming, Miss Torres, and I fear we're already out of time." Chapter 4. Shattered glass. The window exploded inward with a sound like the world breaking. Elena threw her arms over her face as glass rained across the library floor, glittering like stars in the firelight. Strong hands seized her waist, yanking her backward with inhuman speed. She found herself pressed against Lord Thorne's chest, his body a shield between her and whatever had shattered the night. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice stripped of all aristocratic polish. This was something older speaking, something that had survived centuries by being faster, stronger, more ruthless than anything else in the darkness. Through the jagged window frame, Elena saw figures on the lawn. 3 of them, dressed in dark coats, their faces pale as bone in the moonlight. Vampires. She knew it instinctively. The same way prey knows predator. Seelan Thorne, the center figure called, his voice carrying an accent Elena couldn't place. "You've been hiding behind these walls long enough. The Night Court demands your presence." "The Night Court has no authority to demand anything without proper summons," Lord Thorne replied, his tone ice cold. "You overstep, Severin." The vampire Severin laughed, still clinging to the old formalities. How charmingly obsolete. His eyes found Elena, and she felt pinned like an insect under glass. "Is this what's made you so reclusive? A human pet? How disappointing." Lord Thorne's hand tightened on Elena's arm, the only sign of his rage. "State your business or leave my grounds. You have no invitation here." "We don't need one. House Ravencroft has declared formal challenge for your territory. The Accords give us right of presence to deliver the terms." Severin held up a scroll sealed with black wax. 3 nights hence, the Night Court convenes. You will answer our grievances or forfeit your holdings by default." "What grievances?" Lord Thorne demanded. "I've broken no laws. Haven't you?" Severin's smile was all teeth. "Neglect of duty. Failure to maintain proper feeding contracts. Harboring humans without registration." His gaze slid back to Elena. "That one, for instance. Does she know what she's gotten herself into? Does she understand the price of warming a dead man's bed?" Elena felt Lord Thorne go absolutely still beside her, a predator calculating angles of attack. She knew with terrible certainty that if she didn't act, blood would be spilled, possibly hers. "I'm a servant," she said, stepping out from behind Lord Thorne despite his warning growl. "Employed legally, paid fairly. Nothing more." Severin tilted his head, studying her like a curious cat. "Such bravery. Or is it ignorance?" He addressed Lord Thorne again. "Bring her to the court. Let the adjudicators determine if your attachment violates the Accords. Unless, of course, she means so little. You'd rather surrender her now?" "Get out," Lord Thorne said, each word edged with violence. "Deliver your challenge and leave before I demonstrate why my house has held this territory for centuries." "Temper, temper." Severin dropped the scroll on the grass. 3 nights, Thorne. Don't be late. The court grows tired of your isolation." He glanced at Elena one final time. "And do try to keep your pet alive until then. It would be such a waste." The 3 figures blurred into motion, vanishing into the darkness so quickly Elena's eyes couldn't track them. For a long moment, she and Lord Thorne stood frozen, surrounded by broken glass and the dying fire. Then he rounded on her, fury blazing in his eyes. "What were you thinking? Stepping forward like that?" "I was thinking you were about to do something you'd regret," Elena shot back, her own fear transmuting into anger. "You wanted to kill them." "Yes." The word exploded from him. "For threatening you, for invading my home, for daring to suggest." He stopped, ran both hands through his hair in a gesture of pure frustration. "You don't understand what you've done. By acknowledging you, by letting them see you matter, I've painted a target on your back." Elena's legs finally gave out. She sank into the nearest chair, shaking. "Tell me what just happened." "No more half-truths." Lord Thorne paced like a caged wolf, glass crunching under his boots. "House Ravencroft wants to expand their territory. Mine borders theirs, and it's prosperous, well-positioned. But they can't simply take it. The Accords prevent open warfare between houses. So they manufacture grievances, demand court intervention, hope to prove me unfit to rule. And me? How do I factor into their strategy?" He stopped pacing, met her eyes. "If they can prove I've violated the protection laws, that I've fed from you without consent, harmed you, kept you here against your will, they can strip me of my holdings and execute me for treaty violations. But you haven't done any of that. The truth is irrelevant if they can make the court believe otherwise." Lord Thorne moved to the shattered window, stared out at the night. "I should have sent you away the moment I realized what was happening." Should have kept my distance, maintained the fiction that you were nothing more than another servant. Elena rose on unsteady feet, crossed to stand beside him. Why didn't you? Because I'm selfish, he said quietly. Because for the first time in 100 years, I felt something other than endless, grinding loneliness. Because watching you bring light into this mausoleum became the only thing I looked forward to. He turned to her, and she saw naked vulnerability in his face. Because you reminded me what it felt like to be human. Elena's breath caught. Celine, don't. He stepped back, rebuilding his walls. Don't make this harder than it is. You need to leave tonight. I'll have Mrs. Calloway pack your things. There's a carriage house on the southern edge of my territory, abandoned but secure. You'll stay there until I can arrange transport somewhere far from No. Elena interrupted. He blinked. I'm sorry? I said no. She straightened her spine, channeling every ounce of stubborn pride that had gotten her through scandal and exile. You don't get to make this decision for me. Not after everything you just said. Elena, this isn't a game. House Ravencroft will kill you without hesitation if they think it serves their purpose. Then teach me how to survive. She grabbed his hand, forced him to look at her. You said your world has rules, laws, accords. Teach me what I need to know to navigate them. Let me stand beside you instead of hiding me away like some shameful secret. Lord Thorne stared at her as if she'd sprouted wings. You're asking me to bring you deeper into this nightmare. I'm asking you to trust me. Elena squeezed his cold fingers. The way I'm choosing to trust you. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, his hand turned in hers, gripping back with desperate strength. 3 nights, he said hoarsely. That's all the time we have. I'll teach you everything I can. But Elena, his eyes held hers. If it comes down to choosing between you and my territory, I will choose you. Every time. Do you understand what that means? She did. It meant he was willing to lose everything for her. It meant she'd become the thing he valued most in a world that would weaponize that weakness. It meant she'd already fallen too far to climb back out. Then we'd better make those 3 nights count. Elena whispered. Chapter 5. Lessons in Darkness. The state transformed after midnight. Elena had thought she understood its rhythms, the quiet halls, the candlelit corridors, the peculiar staff who worked only night shifts. But now, following Lord Thorne through a hidden door behind the library's bookcases, she realized she'd seen only the surface of a much deeper world. Stone steps spiraled downward into earth and shadow. The air grew colder with each descent, carrying scents of age and secrets. Lord Thorne moved ahead of her, one hand holding a lamp that cast their shadows long and strange against ancient walls. The estate has 3 levels, he explained, his voice echoing. The upper floors are for appearances, what humans expect to see. The ground level serves both worlds. And below, he pushed open an iron door. Below is where we truly exist. Elena stepped through and stopped, breathless. The chamber was vast, carved from living rock, and lined with shelves holding books, scrolls, artifacts that looked older than civilization itself. Tapestries depicted creatures from nightmare and myth, some beautiful, some terrible, all impossible. A long table dominated the center, its surface covered with maps marked in languages she didn't recognize. This is the war room, Lord Thorne said, setting down the lamp. Where my family has planned, negotiated, and survived for 400 years. He gestured to the maps. These show the territories of the 7 great houses. Red is Ravencroft. Blue is Minethorn. The others maintain uneasy alliances, waiting to see who emerges stronger. Elena moved closer, studying the intricate boundaries. You said they manufactured grievances. What exactly are they accusing you of? Negligence, primarily. Lord Thorne's finger traced his territory's borders. I've withdrawn from Vampire Society over the past century. Stopped attending court functions, refused marriage alliances, declined to participate in their political games. They claim this isolation makes me unfit to govern, that I've abandoned my duties to our kind. Have you? He glanced at her sharply, then sighed. In some ways, yes. I grew tired of their machinations, their endless hunger for power disguised as tradition. He paused, seeming to search for words. Peace, simplicity, a life less consumed by what I am. What changed? Why target you now? You, he said simply. Or rather, what you represent. House Ravencroft's spies reported that I'd taken a human into my household, given her quarters near my private chambers, shown her favor beyond her station. They believe I've grown weak, distracted. They think attachment makes me vulnerable. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. The other servants, surely they've noticed nothing improper, haven't they? Lord Thorne moved to a shelf, pulled down a leather journal. Mrs. Calloway reports that I've specifically requested you tend the library, my study, my private rooms. The cook notes I've asked what foods you prefer, ensured they're available. The butler observed me watching you through the windows when you walk the gardens. He opened the journal, showing her pages of careful observations. House Ravencroft has been building their case for months. Elena's hands trembled as she scanned the entries. Each notation was damning in its accuracy. Lord Thorne had been watching her, protecting her, caring about her welfare in ways that stood out starkly against his treatment of other staff. They're not wrong, are they? She whispered. You do care. Disastrously so. He closed the journal with more force than necessary. Which is why the next 3 nights will determine if we both survive. The Night Court operates on ancient law, and law has loopholes. If I can prove you're here of your own free will, that our arrangement benefits you, that no laws have been broken, we might have a chance. What do you need me to do? Lord Thorne turned to face her fully. I need you to understand what you're defending. What I am, truly, without the polish of civilization obscuring it. He held out his hand. This won't be pleasant. Elena took his hand without hesitation. His skin was cold as marble, smooth as glass. Show me. He led her to a corner of the chamber, where a simple chair sat before a small table. Sit, he instructed. When she obeyed, he knelt before her, still holding her hand. Ask me anything. Every question you've wondered, every suspicion you've harbored. I'll answer with complete honesty. Elena's mind raced with possibilities. Finally, she asked, how old are you? 243 years. I was turned in 1782, during the War of Independence. My maker was my father, continuing our family line the only way he could. Do you kill when you feed? No, I haven't taken a life in a century. The bloodlust can be managed, controlled, but it never entirely disappears. His eyes met hers. Right now, I can hear your pulse, smell the warmth of your blood. Every instinct I possess wants to taste you. The only thing stopping me is will, and will can break. Elena swallowed hard. Have you ever wanted to feed from me? Every single day since you entered this house. His admission was raw, painful. Your scent calls to me like nothing I've experienced. When you're near, I have to focus on breathing, a habit I don't technically need, just to avoid doing something unforgivable. What would happen if you did? If you fed from me? Lord Thorne's expression darkened. A blood exchange between vampire and human creates a bond. Temporary. If it happens once, you'd feel echoes of my emotions. I'd be able to sense your general location and well-being. But if it happened multiple times, he stopped, jaw clenching. Tell me, Elena pressed. The bond becomes permanent, unbreakable. You'd be tied to me for the rest of your natural life, and I to you. You'd feel my hunger, my anger, my desires. I'd know your every fear, your pain, your secrets. There would be no privacy, no escape. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. It would be the deepest intimacy possible between our kinds, and the greatest vulnerability. If you died, it would nearly destroy me. If I died, you'd carry the wound forever. Elena processed this, her heart hammering. Is that what House Ravencroft fears? That you've already bonded with me? Yes. A bonded vampire is considered compromised, ruled by attachment rather than reason. If they could prove such a bond exists, I'd be removed from power immediately. But we haven't. No, Lord Thorne interrupted. But they'll try to manufacture evidence. Claim you bear my mark, that you display signs of enthrallment. The court will examine you, test you, search for any proof of violation. Elena felt ice slide down her spine. What kind of examination? Invasive, humiliating. They'll question you under duress, use their abilities to read your emotions, your memories. His hands tightened on hers. This is why you should leave. Why, I'm begging you to reconsider. She looked at their joined hands, her warm skin against his cold perfection, mortal and immortal intertwined. If I stay, if I stand with you at this court, what happens after? If we win, you'll be registered as under my protection, safe from other houses, but marked as mine in their eyes. If we lose, he couldn't finish. If we lose, I die, and you lose everything. Elena completed the thought. She should be terrified, should be running for the door, the city, anywhere far from this impossible choice. Instead, she asked, what do I need to learn to convince them we're telling the truth? Lord Thorne stared at her for a long moment, something like wonder crossing his features. Then he stood, pulled her to her feet, and began her education in surviving the night court. The real lessons had just begun. Chapter 6. Blood and Bargains. Thea worked through the first night until dawn threatened the horizon. Lord Thorne-Seelan, as he'd finally insisted she call him in private, proved a demanding teacher. He drilled her on the hierarchy of the 7 great houses, their territories, their ancient grudges and fragile alliances. He taught her the formal protocols of the night court, the proper way to address elders, the subtle body language that signaled submission or challenge among his kind. Never look a vampire directly in the eyes for more than 3 seconds unless you're prepared for confrontation, he instructed. Pacing before the maps. It's perceived as a challenge to dominance, but avoiding eye contact entirely suggests guilt or deception. You must find the balance, respectful attention without aggression. Elena practiced the delicate dance of vampire etiquette, feeling increasingly out of her depth. How do humans normally survive in your world? Most don't enter it. Seelan stopped pacing, studied her with an expression she couldn't read. Those who do are usually servants bound by contract, donors who provide blood in exchange for protection and payment. Or he hesitated. Or what? Companions, lovers, those who've chosen to entangle their lives with ours despite the danger. His voice softened. It's rare. Most humans flee once they understand what we truly are. I'm still here, Elena pointed out. You're either remarkably brave or profoundly foolish. I haven't determined which. Perhaps both. She moved to the table where he'd laid out documents, contracts written in archaic language, binding agreements between houses, treaties signed in blood rather than ink. These feeding contracts you mentioned, how do they work? Seelan's expression grew guarded. They're formal arrangements. A human agrees to provide blood regularly, and in exchange receives substantial compensation, protection from other vampires, and healing benefits. Our blood can cure illness, slow aging if administered carefully. You have donors? I did. 3 families who've served House Thorne for generations, but I released them from their contracts 5 years ago. He turned away, shame coloring his tone. I couldn't bear the intimacy of it anymore. The gratitude in their eyes when I fed, the trust I didn't deserve. So I've been purchasing from blood banks, drinking cold, sterile bags like a hospital patient. Elena heard the self-loathing beneath his words. That's part of the negligence charge, isn't it? Refusing to maintain proper donor relationships? Yes. House Ravencroft argues that I've abandoned the old ways, that I'm trying to deny my nature. They're not entirely wrong. He finally faced her again. But taking blood from a willing human it's the most intimate act our kind can share. More than sex. More than any physical touch. For those few moments, you're inside someone's life force, tasting their emotions, their essence. It requires absolute trust on both sides. Have you ever? Elena stopped, suddenly uncertain if she wanted the answer. Fed from someone I cared for? Seelan finished quietly. Once, a very long time ago. It was. He closed his eyes. Transcendent and terrible in equal measure. I swore I'd never risk that kind of connection again. The air between them felt heavy with unspoken things. Elena broke the tension by returning to the documents. If the court examines me and finds no evidence of a bond, no mark, no signs of feeding, won't that prove your innocence? It should. But House Ravencroft will argue that I've been feeding from unregistered humans, disposing of bodies, covering my tracks. They'll paint me as a monster operating outside our laws. Seelan moved to stand beside her, his shoulder nearly touching hers. They'll also question why I keep you so close, if not for feeding. What other purpose could you serve? Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. What will you tell them? The truth. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. That you make me feel human again. That your presence reminds me why I once believed immortality could be a gift rather than a curse. That watching you move through my house has been the only light in a century of darkness. Her breath caught. Seelan, a sharp knock echoed through the chamber. Both of them spun toward the iron door as Mrs. Calloway's voice carried through. My lord, you have a visitor. She insists it's urgent. Seelan's expression hardened. Who? Lady Morgana Delacy, of House Thorne. The name clearly meant something. Seelan's entire body went rigid, his hands clenching into fists. Tell her I'm not receiving visitors. She says she comes under flag of truce, bearing information about House Ravencroft's challenge. Mrs. Calloway's voice carried disapproval. Shall I turn away a member of your own house, my lord? Seelan cursed softly in a language Elena didn't recognize. Show her to the drawing room. I'll be there momentarily. He waited until Mrs. Calloway's footsteps retreated before turning to Elena. You need to stay here. Who is she? My maker's sister. The last surviving member of the original Thorn bloodline besides myself. Bitterness edged his words. We haven't spoken in 80 years. If she's here now, it's because she wants something. Let me come with you, Elena said. If she has information about the challenge, absolutely not. Morgana is, he struggled for words. Dangerous in ways you can't understand. She plays games that span decades, manipulates alliances like chess pieces. I won't expose you to her. You can't keep hiding me away. If I'm to stand beside you at court, I need to understand all the players. Elena stepped closer, touched his arm. Trust me to handle myself. Seelan stared at her, warring with himself. Finally, he nodded. Stay close to me. Don't answer her questions directly. And whatever she offers you, no matter how tempting, refuse. They climbed the stone stairs together, Elena's heart pounding with each step. As they emerged into the library's false normalcy, Seelan paused to compose himself, smoothing his expression into aristocratic neutrality. One more thing, he said quietly. Morgana will try to determine what you mean to me. She'll probe, test, manipulate. The less you react, the better. What does she want? Power. She always has. Seelan's jaw tightened. And she'll do anything to get it. They walked through the candlelit halls to the drawing room. When Seelan pushed open the door, Elena got her first look at Lady Morgana Delacy. She was beautiful the way a blade was beautiful, all sharp edges and deadly grace. Dark hair cascaded past her shoulders, framing a face of porcelain perfection. She wore a gown from another era, deep crimson silk that whispered against the floor as she turned to face them. Her eyes the same pale silver as Seelan's fixed on Elena with predatory interest. Seelan, darling, she purred, ignoring Elena entirely. Still hiding in this moldering ruin, I see. And here I thought the rumors about you taking a human pet were exaggerated. Her smile was all teeth. How delightfully sordid. Seelan's hand found the small of Elena's back, a gesture of protection. State your business, Morgana. You're not welcome here. Not welcome? Morgana laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. I'm trying to save your existence, nephew. Though I'm beginning to wonder if you deserve the effort. Her gaze finally acknowledged Elena. Tell me, little human, do you have any idea what you've walked into? Chapter 7. The Price of Alliance. Elena met Lady Morgana's predatory gaze with more courage than she felt. I understand enough. Do you? Morgana circled them like a shark, sending blood, her crimson gown trailing across Persian carpets. Do you understand that House Ravencroft has been building their case for 3 years? That they've bribed court officials, secured alliances with 4 of the 7 houses, planted evidence of Seelan's supposed violations across half the territory. She stopped directly in front of Elena, tilting her head with inhuman precision. Do you understand that walking into that court in 3 nights will be like walking into your own execution? Enough, Morgana, Seelan said, his voice deadly calm. Say what you came to say or leave. Morgana's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in her eyes. I came to offer you a way out, nephew. Though watching you play house with this mortal, I wonder if you've already lost your mind along with your good sense. A way out, Seelan repeated flatly. You'll forgive me if I'm skeptical. You've never done anything without expecting significant return. True. Morgana moved to the sideboard, poured herself whiskey from a crystal decanter with movements too graceful to be human. But in this case, our interests align. I have no desire to see House Thorn absorbed into Ravencroft's territory. It would upset the balance of power, strengthen our enemies, weaken our bloodline's position. Our bloodline, Seelan said bitterly. You disowned me 80 years ago, called me weak for refusing to expand through conquest. I called you short-sighted. There's a difference. Morgana sipped her drink, studying him over the rim. But perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps your isolation was strategy rather than cowardice. After all, you've maintained this territory without bloodshed, kept your humans content, avoided the wars that have decimated other houses. Her gaze shifted to Elena. And now you've found something worth protecting beyond mere power. Elena felt Seelan's hand tighten against her back, a silent warning not to react. What are you offering? He asked. Morgana set down her glass with deliberate precision. House Ravencroft's case rests on 3 pillars. First, your isolation from vampire society, your refusal to attend court, to form alliances, to participate in house politics. Second, your abandonment of traditional feeding contracts, which they claim shows dangerous instability. Third, her eyes locked on Elena. Your alleged violation of protection laws by keeping an unregistered human in your household for improper purposes, all circumstantial, Seelan countered. They have no proof of actual violations. They don't need proof. They need doubt. Morgana began pacing, her movements serpentine. The court operates on perception as much as evidence. If enough houses believe you've become unfit, they'll rule against you regardless of technicalities. She paused. Unless you give them a reason not to, which is, marry me. The words fell like stones into still water. Elena felt the room tilt, her stomach dropping away. Seelan's hand left her back as he stepped forward, putting himself between Elena and Morgana. Absolutely not, Morgana laughed, delighted by his reaction. Don't be dramatic. It would be a political marriage, nothing more. A formal alliance between the last to Thorn bloodline members, demonstrating your commitment to house traditions and vampire society. It would neutralize their isolation argument immediately. And the feeding contracts? Seelan's voice was granite. I have 3 established donor families who would transfer to your household as part of the marriage settlement. The court couldn't claim negligence if you're actively maintaining proper contracts. Again, Morgana's smile turned sharp. As for your human, she could remain as registered household staff. Perfectly legal, completely above suspicion. You'd have your territory, your autonomy, and your little pet. Everyone wins. Elena finally found her voice. Except for the part where he'd be bound to you. Morgana turned to her with genuine surprise, as if a piece of furniture had spoken. How astute. Yes, marriage bonds between vampires are permanent. We'd be tied together for eternity or until one of us is destroyed. She addressed Seelan again. But we've always worked well together, nephew. We understand each other. We want the same things. We want nothing alike, Seelan said coldly. You hunger for power. I want peace. Peace? Morgana's laughter held an edge of cruelty. You want to play human with a mortal girl who'll be dead in 60 years, while you continue on alone. That's not peace, Seelan. That's cowardice dressed up as nobility. She moved closer, her voice dropping to silk. I'm offering you survival. Take it, or watch everything you've built burn. Seelan was silent for a long moment. Elena watched emotions flicker across his face, calculation, anger, resignation. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. I need time to consider. You have until tomorrow night, Morgana said. After that, I withdraw my offer, and you face the court alone. She collected her cloak from a chair, paused at the door. Oh, and Seelan, I'd advise against asking your human's opinion on this matter. She's proven she has poor survival instincts already. Her gaze cut to Elena. If you truly cared for him, you'd encourage this alliance. But I suspect you're too selfish for that. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. For several heartbeats, neither Elena nor Seelan moved. Then he turned to the sideboard, poured whiskey with shaking hands, and downed it in one swallow. Despite his earlier claim that he didn't consume anything but blood, Seelan Elena started. Don't. He set the glass down carefully, as if it might shatter. Whatever you're about to say, don't. She's manipulating you. Surely you see that. Of course I see it. He laughed, a broken sound. Morgana doesn't help anyone unless it serves her agenda. This marriage would strengthen her position as much as mine. She'd have access to my territory, my resources, He stopped abruptly. Your what? My vulnerabilities. Seelan finally turned to face her, and Elena saw something she'd never expected to see in his ancient eyes: fear. If we married, she'd be entitled to know everything about my household, my habits, my attachments. She'd have legal authority over all registered humans under my protection. Understanding crashed over Elena like ice water. Including me. Yes. The word came out raw. She could dismiss you, relocate you, forbid me from seeing you. And I'd be powerless to stop her without violating our marriage contract. His hands clenched into fists. It's a trap with velvet lining. I'd save my territory and lose everything that makes it worth saving. Elena moved to him, took his cold hands in her warm ones. Then we find another way. There is no other way. Morgana's right about the evidence, the alliances. House Ravencroft has been thorough. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I've been so focused on keeping you safe, I didn't see the noose tightening until it was too late. What if we gave them what they wanted? Elena said slowly, an idea forming. Not Morgana's marriage, but proof that I'm here legally, willingly. What if I became an official donor? Seelan went absolutely still. What? You said feeding from a willing human is legal, even expected. What if I signed a formal contract? It would neutralize their argument that you're violating protection laws. Elena's heart hammered, but her voice stayed steady. It would show you're maintaining proper traditions, and I'd be registered, protected. They couldn't touch me. No, Seelan pulled away from her as if burned. Absolutely not. You don't understand what you're suggesting. Then explain it to me. I've spent 200 years learning control, and I still want to taste you every moment we're in the same room. His eyes blazed. If I fed from you, if I felt your blood on my tongue, your life force flowing into me, I would never be able to let you go. The bond would consume us both. Maybe that's not the worst thing, Elena whispered. The window shattered again, and this time the attackers didn't bother with talking first. Chapter 8. Blood spilled for vampires poured through the shattered window like smoke given form, their movements too fast for Elena's human eyes to fully track. She caught impressions, pale faces, dark clothing, the glint of blades that looked older than nations. Seelan moved faster. One moment he stood beside her. The next he was across the room, intercepting the first attacker with brutal efficiency. The crack of bone echoed through the drawing room as he snapped the vampire's arm, wrenched the blade free, and drove it into another's chest in a single fluid motion. Elena, run! He shouted, parrying a strike that would have taken his head off. The servant's passage behind the bookcase go, but Elena's feet wouldn't obey. She watched in horror as two vampires circled Seelan while a third advanced on her. His smile revealing elongated fangs. The little human, he crooned, his voice thick with an accent Elena couldn't place. Lord Severin sends his regards. He thought you might need persuading to testify against your master. Elena backed toward the fireplace, her hand closing around the poker. I'm not testifying to anything. Oh, you will. The vampire lunged with inhuman speed. Elena swung the poker with all her strength. The iron connected with the side of his head, sending him stumbling sideways with a hiss of pain. Iron, she remembered Seelan mentioning it, burned them, weakened them. Iron won't save you. The vampire snarled, recovering too quickly. But it will make this hurt more. He grabbed her wrist, his grip like a vice, crushing bone. Elena screamed as the poker clattered to the floor. The vampire yanked her close, his breath cold against her neck. Should I drain her here, Thorn? He called out. Or take her back to Lord Severin in pieces. Seelan's roar was inhuman, primal. Elena saw him move, saw him literally tear through the vampire, restraining him, ripping the creature's throat out with his bare hands. The violence was shocking, absolute. Nothing like the controlled aristocrat who'd taught her etiquette and protocol. This was the predator beneath the polish, the vampire holding. Elena hesitated for a fatal second. Seelan crossed the room in a blur, seized the man by the skull, and twisted. The crack was sickening. The vampire's body crumbled to ash before it hit the floor. Elena stumbled backward, her crushed wrist cradled against her chest. The room spun, nausea rising in her throat. Two vampires were dead, truly dead, reduced to nothing. A third lay groaning, the blade still protruding from his chest. The fourth had fled through the window. Seelan stood in the center of the carnage, covered in ash and worse, his chest heaving, despite his earlier claim that he didn't need to breathe. His eyes found Elena, and she saw the monster there, the ancient, deadly thing that had survived 2 centuries by being more ruthless than anything else in the darkness. Then his gaze dropped to her wrist, already swelling, the bone clearly broken. And the monster became a man again. Elena, he was beside her in an instant, cradling her injured arm with devastating gentleness. God, I'm sorry. I should have. I failed to protect you. Saved my life. Elena managed through gritted teeth. The pain was extraordinary, radiating up her arm in waves. I put you in danger in the first place. Seelan's face twisted with anguish. He looked at the surviving vampire, who stared back with undisguised hatred. Who sent you? Go to hell, Thorn. Seelan's expression went absolutely cold. He crossed to the vampire, wrenched the blade free, and pressed it against the man's throat. I'll ask once more. Who authorized this attack? Lord Severin. Under House Ravencroft's authority. The vampire spat blood. We were to bring the human to testify about your violations. If she resisted, we had permission to use necessary force. Necessary force, Seelan repeated, his voice deadly soft. You broke her wrist. You threatened to drain her. You call that necessary? We call it effective. The vampire's smile was full of malice. She'll testify now, won't she? Tell the court how you kept her here against her will, how you couldn't even protect her from attack in your own house, how weak you've become. Seelan drove the blade through the vampire's heart without hesitation. As ash rained across the carpet, he turned back to Elena, who stood frozen, processing what she'd just witnessed. We need to set your wrist, he said, his voice carefully controlled. May I? Elena nodded, unable to speak. Seelan guided her to a chair, knelt before her, and examined the injury with practiced efficiency. His touch was gentle, despite the power she knew lurked beneath his skin. It's a clean break. I can set it, but it will hurt. He met her eyes. There's another option. What option? My blood can heal you, completely. Within minutes, your wrist would be whole again. His jaw clenched. But I need your explicit consent. After what you just saw, what I just did, I wouldn't blame you if you refused. Elena looked at him, this ancient, deadly creature who'd just killed 3 vampires with his bare hands to protect her, who'd spent 3 nights teaching her his world's laws, instead of sending her away, who looked at her like she was something precious instead of convenient. The blood bond you mentioned, she said. Would this create it? Not from a single exchange for healing purposes. But Elena, he stopped, seeming to struggle with himself. If you allow my blood into your system, you'll feel the connection. Brief, temporary, but intense. You'll know what I am at the deepest level. There's no going back from that knowledge. Outside, voices shouted. Mrs. Calloway's among them, rallying the household staff. More attackers might come. They were out of time, out of options. Elena made her choice. Do it. Seelan's eyes widened. Are you certain? I'm certain I can't testify at court with a broken wrist. I'm certain we need every advantage we can get. Elena held his gaze. And I'm certain I trust you more than I fear what you are. For a moment, Seelan simply stared at her as if she'd performed a miracle. Then, with shaking hands, he drew a knife from his boot and sliced across his palm. Dark blood welled up, nearly black in the lamplight. Drink, he said, his voice rough. Just a few drops should be enough. Elena brought his hand to her lips, tasted copper and something else, something ancient and powerful and utterly foreign. The blood slid down her throat like liquid ice. The world exploded. Sensation crashed over her. Seelan's terror for her safety, his rage at the attackers, his desperate, overwhelming need to protect her at any cost. She felt his hunger, his loneliness, his bone-deep exhaustion with existence. And beneath it all, something else. Something that felt like love, absolute and consuming and terrifying in its intensity. Elena gasped, breaking contact. Seelan caught her as her legs gave out, his arms an anchor, while her mind reeled from the onslaught of emotion. I have you, he murmured against her hair. I have you. Breathe. Gradually, the sensations faded, leaving only echoes. But Elena could still feel him. There, a presence at the edge of her consciousness. Could feel his heart. Did he have a heart? Pounding in rhythm with hers. Her wrist tingled, then burned. She watched in fascination as the swelling receded, the bone knitting itself back together under her skin. Within moments, the pain vanished entirely. How do you feel? Seelan asked, still holding her as if she might shatter. Elena flexed her fingers, testing. Perfect. Whole. I feel. She struggled for words. I feel you. Your fear. Your guilt. The bond will fade within hours, he assured her. But she heard the lie beneath it. Felt the lie, actually, through their temporary connection. You're lying, she whispered. It won't fade. Not completely. Seelan's arms tightened around her. No, he admitted. It won't. I'm sorry. I should have warned you more clearly. I wouldn't have changed my decision. Elena pulled back to look at him. Seelan, what I felt just then, what you feel for me, is the reason you need to leave, he interrupted. After what just happened, after Morgana's offer, after he stopped, grief and longing warring across his features. I can't keep you safe. Tonight proved that. Tonight proved we're stronger together, Elena countered. She could feel his emotions churning through their link, love and terror and desperate hope all tangled together. I'm not leaving. Not now. Not when the door burst open. Mrs. Calloway stood there, her face pale with shock. My lord, she said. Lady Morgana has returned. And she's brought the night court with her. Chapter 9. The night court grand hall had been transformed. What had been a dusty, unused chamber when Elena first arrived now blazed with candlelight, hundreds of tapers and silver candelabras casting shadows that moved like living things across ancient stone walls. Tapestries depicting the 7 great houses hung from the vaulted ceiling, their heraldic symbols glowing with threads that seemed to hold their own luminescence, and everywhere, vampires. They lined the walls like statues carved from marble, their inhuman stillness making Elena's skin crawl. She recognized none of them, but felt their collective attention like physical weight as she entered on Seelan's arm. Through their blood bond, she felt his tension, his calculation of angles and alliances, his determination to keep her safe despite impossible odds. At the far end of the hall, 7 thrones had been arranged in a semicircle. 6 were occupied by figures who radiated power like others radiated heat. The 7th, the highest, carved from black stone and inlaid with silver, sat empty. Lady Morgana stood to one side, her crimson gown a slash of color among the blacks and grays. When her eyes met Elena's, her smile was triumphant. Lord Seelan Thorne, a voice boomed through the hall. The vampire who spoke sat in the center throne, his face lined with age. Despite their kind's immortality, you stand accused of violating the ancient accords. How do you answer? Seelan released Elena's arm, stepped forward alone. Through their bond, she felt him lock away his emotions. Become the aristocrat who'd ruled this territory for centuries. I answer that I have broken no laws, honored all treaties, and maintained my holdings according to every standard set forth in the covenant. His voice carried through the hall without effort. These accusations are manufactured by House Ravencroft to justify territorial expansion through illegal means. Lord Severin emerged from the shadows, his expression mocking. Illegal? We followed proper protocol, filed formal grievances, requested court intervention. He gestured to Elena, and brought evidence of your violations. The human girl unregistered, unprotected, kept in your household for purposes that violate every protection law we've established. Miss Torres is registered as household staff, Seelan countered. Her employment contract is legal and current. She receives fair wages, adequate housing, and works of her own free will. Does she? The elder vampire leaned forward, his ancient eyes finding Elena. Come here, child. Let us see what condition you're in after months under Thorne's care. Elena's legs trembled as she walked forward, acutely aware of dozens of predatory gazes tracking her movement. She stopped before the thrones, dropped into the curtsy Seelan had taught her, and waited. Look at me, the elder commanded. Elena raised her eyes, careful to break contact. After 2 seconds, the vampire's expression was unreadable. She shows proper deference, he observed. Seelan has taught her our ways. Interesting. He inhaled deeply. And she carries his scent. More interesting still. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. Elena felt Seelan's alarm through their bond, though his face remained impassive. His scent is on every servant in that household, Seelan said smoothly. It means nothing, doesn't it? Lord Severin moved closer to Elena, circling her like a predator. Tell me, Miss Torres, has Lord Thorne ever fed from you? No, Elena answered, keeping her voice steady. Has he offered you his blood? Elena hesitated. Through their bond, she felt Seelan's silent plea not to lie lies would be detected, would condemn them both. Yes, she admitted. Tonight, after I was injured during an attack on the estate, gasps echoed through the hall. Severin's smile was vicious. An attack? How convenient. And you just happened to need his blood to heal? My wrist was broken, Elena said, meeting his eyes directly this time, no longer caring about protocol. By one of your vampires, Lord Severin. He and 3 others invaded Lord Thorne's home with orders to kidnap me or kill me. Lord Thorne defended me, as was his right under covenant law. She lies, Severin hissed. I authorized no such attack. Then perhaps you should maintain better control over your house, Elena shot back. Through her bond with Seelan, she felt his surprise, his pride, his terror. The vampire who survived gave very specific testimony before he died. He named you explicitly. Convenient that he's dead and cannot verify this story. 3 others turned to ash in Lord Thorne's drawing room. Elena continued, her voice gaining strength. A 4th fled through the window. I'm certain he reported back to someone. Perhaps you should ask your subordinates what orders they've been carrying out in your name. The elder vampire raised a hand, silencing the growing murmurs. These are serious accusations on both sides. His gaze moved between Elena and Seelan. Lord Thorne, you admit to giving this human your blood? For healing purposes only, as permitted under emergency provisions of the covenant, Seelan answered. My household was under attack. Miss Torres was injured defending herself. I acted to preserve her life, and created a blood bond in the process. The elder's expression was grave. You must know how this appears. A human kept close, given access to your blood, carrying your scent because I care for her, Seelan interrupted, his voice ringing through the hall. Not as property, not as sustenance, but as he stopped, seemed to gather himself. The covenant requires consent, transparency, protection of human autonomy. I have violated none of these principles. If caring for Miss Torres's well-being is a crime, then I stand guilty. But do not twist my regard into something predatory, when it is the opposite. Silence fell like a hammer. Elena felt shock ripple through the assembled vampires. Apparently such open admission of attachment was rare, perhaps unheard of. Lady Morgana chose that moment to step forward. Elders, if I may speak? The central vampire nodded. Proceed, Lady Morgana. I came here tonight to offer my nephew an alliance through marriage. A bond that would strengthen House Thorne, demonstrate his commitment to our traditions, and resolve all questions of his fitness to rule. Morgana's voice was silk over steel. He refused. Because of her. She pointed at Elena. He would rather lose his territory, his status, everything our bloodline has built, than bind himself properly to vampire society. This is not sentiment. This is obsession. And obsession makes him unfit. That's not true, Elena said, before she could stop herself. Every eye turned to her. He refused because your offer was a trap. Because you would have used the marriage to control him, to gain access to his territory and his. She stopped, realizing too late she'd spoken out of turn. His what? Morgana's smile was cruel. His human pet? My dear girl, did you truly think he cared for you specifically? You're a novelty, a distraction. In a decade, you'll be old, and he'll still be exactly as he is now, bored with you, looking for the next bright thing to alleviate his endless tedium. Elena felt Seelan's rage through their bond, felt him about to speak, but she spoke first. You're wrong. Her voice shook but held. I've felt what he feels, through the bond you're all so concerned about. I know exactly how he sees me, and it's nothing like you describe. The bond, the elder vampire said thoughtfully. How strong is this connection, Miss Torres? Strong enough that I can feel his emotions. That I know when he's in pain, when he's afraid, when he's. Elena's voice caught. When he loves. The word hung in the air like a confession. Seelan's eyes met hers across the space between them, and she felt everything he'd been holding back crash through their link. Longing, devotion, desperate hope, and bone-deep terror of losing her. This bond, the elder said slowly. It was created through a single healing exchange? Yes, Seelan answered, his voice rough. Impossible. The elder leaned back, considering. A bond that strong requires multiple exchanges, deliberate creation. Unless. He paused, studying them both. Unless the connection already existed before the blood was shared. An emotional bond so powerful it amplified the physical one beyond normal parameters. Elena understood what he was suggesting. That she and Seelan had been connected before any blood was exchanged. That what they felt was real, undeniable, powerful enough to bridge the gap between mortal and immortal. Elders, Lord Severin said desperately, this proves my point. He's obsessed, compromised. It proves he's capable of the kind of bond our kind once valued above all else, the elder interrupted. Before we became cold, political, treating humans as resources rather than individuals, he rose from his throne. I am calling for a vote. All in favor of removing Lord Thorne from his territory, raise your hand. 3 hands rose. Severin's supporters. Those opposed? 3 more hands, leaving the elder as deciding vote. The tension in the hall was suffocating. The elder looked at Seelan, then at Elena, then back to Seelan. I vote to uphold Lord Thorne's rule, he said finally. On one condition. Chapter 10. Dawn's promiseth condition hung in the air like a blade. What condition? Seelan asked, his voice carefully controlled, though Elena felt his dread through their bond. The elder vampire descended from his throne, his movements measured and deliberate. The bond you share with this human is unprecedented, powerful, and as Lady Morgana correctly observes, it makes you vulnerable. He circled them slowly. House Ravencroft will not stop simply because this court has ruled in your favor. They will continue to probe for weakness, to manufacture grievances, to threaten everything and everyone you care for. I can handle Ravencroft, Seelan said. Can you? The elder stopped before Elena. Can you protect her when you're called to court? When you must attend to diplomatic matters across your territory? When sleep claims you at dawn and she remains vulnerable throughout the daylight hours? His ancient eyes held knowledge of countless centuries. A bond this strong demands formalization, Lord Thorn. The covenant must recognize her status, or she remains a target anyone can exploit. Elena's heart hammered. She knew what was coming before the words were spoken. You must either release her from your service, entirely send her far from here, sever all contact, let the bond fade over time. The elder paused. Or you must bind her to you formally. Make her your recognized consort under covenant law. Give her the protections and status that come with that position. Silence crashed through the hall. Elena felt Seelan's emotions spiral through their connection: hope, terror, longing, guilt, all tangled together in an impossible knot. Consort, Seelan repeated, his voice hollow. You're asking me to condemn her to this life, to tie her to a creature who will watch her age and die while I remain unchanged, to make her a target for every enemy I have for the rest of her mortal existence. I'm asking you to give her a choice, the elder corrected. As the covenant demands, consent, transparency, autonomy. He turned to Elena. Miss Torres, do you understand what is being offered? Elena's mouth was dry. Through her bond with Seelan, she felt him silently begging her to choose freedom, to save herself, to run while she still could. But she also felt what he'd never say aloud, that losing her would break something in him that 2 centuries hadn't managed to crack. What would it mean? She asked. To be his consort? You would be registered as under his permanent protection, the elder explained. Any harm done to you would be considered harm done to House Thorn itself, punishable by the full weight of covenant law. You would have access to his resources, his name, his status. In return, you would be bound to his territory, unable to leave without permission from both him and the court. So I'd be his prisoner, Elena said flatly. You'd be his partner, the elder countered. The covenant recognizes consort bonds as partnerships, not ownership. You would maintain autonomy over your own body, your own choices. He could not compel you, feed from you without consent, or restrict your freedom beyond the territorial limitations. But you would be tied to him, and he to you, until death claims one of you. Elena looked at Seelan. Through their bond, she felt his anguish, his certainty that should choose to leave, that any sane person would run from what he was offering. But Elena had spent 2 years in a gilded cage of someone else's making, molding herself to fit expectations that were never truly hers. She'd been engaged to a man who'd claimed to love her, but had never truly seen her. She'd been cast out by family who'd valued reputation over loyalty, and then she'd found this impossible, deadly, heartbreakingly lonely creature who looked at her like she was the only light in his eternal darkness, who'd taught her his world's secrets, protected her at the cost of everything, admitted his feelings before an assembly of his peers, despite the vulnerability it created, who made her feel more alive than she'd ever felt in her careful, proper, suffocating human life. I want to hear it from you, Elena said to Seelan. Not the court, not the covenant. You? What do you want? Seelan's control finally shattered. I want you to live, he said, his voice breaking. I want you to find some nice human man, have children, grow old in sunlight, die peacefully surrounded by people who don't need blood to survive. I want you to have every beautiful mortal thing I can never give you. That's what you think I should want, Elena pressed. What do you want? I want. He stopped, closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they blazed with centuries of loneliness. I want you to stay. I want to wake every evening knowing you're near. I want to hear your voice, your laughter, your arguments when I'm being insufferably aristocratic. I want to teach you everything I know and learn everything you can show me about being human again. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I want to love you for however many years we're given, even knowing it will destroy me when you're gone. Tears slid down Elena's cheeks. Through their bond, she felt the truth of every word, the devastating honesty of his admission. Then you'll have to accept my choice, she said. Just as I accept yours. She turned to the elder vampire, straightened her spine, and spoke clearly enough for the entire assembly to hear. I consent to the consort bond. Freely, fully, with complete understanding of the terms. Gasps rippled through the hall. Lord Severn's face twisted with rage. Lady Morgana's expression was unreadable, though Elena thought she saw something almost like respect flicker in those cold eyes. Seelan stared at her as if she'd performed the impossible. Elena, are you certain? Once this is done, I'm certain. She crossed to him, took his cold hands in her warm ones. I'm certain that I've spent my whole life making choices based on fear and propriety and what others expected. I'm certain that for the first time, I'm choosing someone because it's what I truly want. She squeezed his fingers. I'm choosing you. Choose me back. For a moment, Seelan simply looked at her, wonder and terror and love warring across his features. Then he pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers, and breathed words meant only for her. I choose you. In this life and whatever comes after, I choose you. The elder vampire raised his hands. Let it be recorded. By the authority of the Night Court and the covenant that binds us all, I recognize Elena Torres as consort to Lord Seelan Thorne of House Thorne. Let any who would harm her answer to the full assembly of the 7 great houses. Power rippled through the hall, ancient, binding, absolute. Elena felt it settle over her like an invisible mantle, felt the bond with Seelan deepen, strengthen, become something more permanent than blood or vows. Lord Severn's voice cut through the moment. This isn't over, Thorne. You've won tonight, but House Ravencroft will not forget this insult. You will withdraw your challenge and leave my territory. Seelan interrupted, his voice carrying absolute authority. The court has ruled. Accept it with grace, or face sanctions for attempting to subvert covenant law. Severn's jaw clenched, but he bowed stiffly. As the court commands, his eyes found Elena. Enjoy your victory, little human. Immortality has a way of revealing whether love can truly last. He swept from the hall, his supporters trailing behind him. Gradually, the other vampires dispersed, until only the elder remained with Seelan and Elena. A word of advice, Lord Thorne, the elder said quietly. House Ravencroft speaks truth about one thing: immortality tests all bonds eventually. Your consort will age while you remain unchanged. She will face challenges you cannot fully understand. The question is whether you love her enough to let her grow, change, even leave. If that becomes what she needs, I do, Seelan said without hesitation. The elder studied them both. Then perhaps you'll succeed where so many others have failed. I wish you luck. He paused at the door. And Lord Thorne? Start attending court functions again. Isolation invited this challenge. Don't make the same mistake twice. Then they were alone in the vast hall, surrounded by dying candles, and the weight of what they'd just committed to. Elena sagged against Seelan, exhaustion crashing over her. Through their bond, she felt his matching weariness, his relief, his overwhelming love. What happens now? She whispered. Seelan wrapped his arms around her, held her as if she might vanish. Now we figure out how to build a life between mortal and immortal. How to navigate my world without losing what makes you beautifully, impossibly human. He pulled back to look at her. Now we face whatever comes together. Through the windows, the first hint of dawn touched the horizon. Seelan tensed, instinct pulling him toward the darkness, away from the coming sun, but he didn't let her go. I should get inside, he said. Daylight and vampires don't mix well. Then let's go home, Elena said. Home. The words settled between them like a promise. Not his estate or her employment, but something they would build together, mortal and immortal. Human and vampire, light and darkness intertwined. Seelan took her hand, and together they walked toward whatever dawn would bring.